The Haunting of Willow Manor. Chapter 1. Willow Manor had been abandoned for years, and its windows were broken, the roof was caving, and the walls were crumbling. It was a place of nightmares, and no one dared to step foot inside it. The locals believed that the place was cursed, and anyone who entered it would never come out. However, there were always those who were curious and wanted to explore the abandoned house. One such group was a group of teenagers who had grown up hearing the stories about Willow Manor. The group of friends consisted of 4 teenagers: Alex, Ben, Sarah, and Jess, who were all in their late teens and had just graduated from high school. They had heard a lot about Willow Manor, and they were determined to explore it. They had heard that the house was haunted by the ghosts of the previous occupants who had died in mysterious circumstances. The group arrived at the manor just as the sun was setting. They parked their car at the end of the long driveway and walked towards the house. As they got closer, they could see that the house was in worse condition than they had imagined. The windows were boarded up, and the front door was hanging off its hinges. "Are you sure we should be doing this?" Jess asked nervously. "Of course we should," Alex replied, trying to sound brave. "It's just an old abandoned house. There's nothing to be afraid of." The group made their way inside the house, and as they entered, they were hit with a musty smell. The floorboards creaked beneath their feet, and the walls were covered in mold. The place was a mess, and it was clear that no one had lived there for years. The group explored the ground floor first, and it was clear that the house had been abandoned in a hurry. There were plates left on the dining table, and clothes left on the floor. It was as if the previous occupants had fled the house in a hurry. As they made their way to the first floor, they heard strange noises coming from the upstairs. It sounded like footsteps, but there was no one else in the house. The group froze, unsure of what to do. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered. "Yeah, I did," Ben replied, "but it's probably just the wind. Let's keep going." The group continued upstairs, and as they reached the top, they saw a door that was slightly open. They could hear noises coming from inside, and they cautiously approached the door. As they opened the door, they were hit with a wave of cold air. It was freezing inside, and they could see their breath. The room was completely empty, except for a large mirror on the wall. "Let's get out of here," Jess said, shivering. As they turned to leave, they saw a figure in the mirror. It was a woman, and she was staring back at them with empty eyes. The group screamed and ran out of the house as fast as they could. Chapter 2. The group of friends decided to go back to Willow Manor the next day to investigate further. As they approached the house, they could see that the front door was closed. This was strange, as they had left it open the day before. As they entered the house, they could see that the place had changed overnight. The furniture that had been left behind the day before was now gone, and the plates that had been on the table had been washed and put away. "What's going on here?" Alex asked. The group of friends were confused and scared, had no idea who had been in the house and what they had done. They decided to split up and explore the house in pairs. Alex and Sarah went to explore the basement, while Ben and Jess went to check out the attic. As Alex and Sarah made their way down to the basement, they could hear strange ooze coming from the darkness. "Are you sure we should be doing this?" Sarah asked nervously. "Don't be such a scaredy cat," Alex replied. "It's just an old basement." As they reached the bottom of the stairs, they saw a figure in the darkness. It was a woman, and she was holding a candle. Alex and Sarah screamed and ran back up the stairs. Meanwhile, Ben and Jess had made their way up to the attic. The room was filled with old furniture and boxes. As they were looking around, they found an old diary. "Hey, look at this," Jess said, holding up the diary. "It looks really old." As they started to read the diary, they realized that it belonged to the previous owner of the house, a woman named Emily. They learned that Emily had been married to a wealthy man named Richard, but their marriage had been troubled. Emily had suspected that Richard was having an affair with her sister. One night, Emily had followed Richard and her sister to a hotel and had caught them in the act. As Ben and Jess finished reading the diary, they heard a strange coming from the corner of the room. They looked over and saw a ghostly figure standing in the shadows. "Get out of here," the figure whispered. Ben and Jess ran out of the attic and met up with Alex and Sarah outside. They told them what they had seen, and the group decided to leave the house and never come back. Chapter 3. Over the next few weeks, strange things began to happen to the group of friends. They would see ghostly figures in their dreams and hear strange noises in their homes. They realized that they had brought something back with them from Willow Manor, and they didn't know how to get rid of it. One night, as the group was having a sleepover at Sarah's house, they decided to try and communicate with the ghost of Emily. They set up a whiteboard and began to ask questions. "Emily, are you there?" Jess asked. The planchette moved on its own, spelling out the word yes. "What do you want from us?" Alex asked. The planchette spelled out the word revenge. The group was terrified, and they didn't know what to do. Realized that they had awakened something evil, and they were in grave danger. The next day, the group decided to seek out the help of a psychic. They found a woman named Mrs. Williams who claimed to have experience in dealing with haunted houses. Mrs. Williams listened to their story and then went to visit Willow Manor. When she returned, she told the group that the house was indeed haunted by the ghost of Emily, and that they needed to perform a cleansing ritual to get rid of her spirit. The group agreed to do the ritual, and Mrs. Williams led them through the steps. As they performed the ritual, they could feel a strange energy in the air. Suddenly, they heard a loud scream, and the house began to shake. When the shaking stopped, the group looked around and saw that the house was completely destroyed. Chapter 4. The group of friends stood outside the ruined Willow Manor, staring at the destruction. They had no idea what had just happened or how to explain it to anyone. Mrs. Williams spoke up. "I'm afraid the cleansing ritual may have been too much for Emily's spirit to handle. She may have been too attached to this place to let go peacefully." The group nodded, still in shock. As they drove away, they all agreed to never speak of Willow Manor again. They had been through enough, and they didn't want to risk anything else happening. Months went by, and the group tried to move on with their lives. However, strange things continued to happen. They would hear whispers in the wind, and catch glimpses of ghostly figures in their peripheral vision. It was as if Emily's spirit was still with them, haunting them. One day, just received a package in the mail. It was a box of old photographs, all of them of Emily and Richard. As she looked through them, she noticed something strange. In every photo, there was a shadowy figure lurking in the background, watching them. Just knew she had to show the photos to the rest of the group. When they saw the figures in the photos, they realized that Emily's spirit was still with them, and she was not at peace. The group decided to reach out to Mrs. Williams again. She agreed to come to their ad, but warned them that the only way to put Emily's spirit to rest was to uncover the truth about her death. The group began to investigate, trying to find any evidence that Richard had been having an affair with Emily's sister. They eventually found a diary belonging to Emily's sister, which confirmed their suspicions. As they dug deeper, they discovered that Richard had been abusive to Emily, and that he had been using her family's wealth to fund his own lavish lifestyle. The group presented their findings to Mrs. Williams, who performed a final cleansing ritual to put Emily's spirit to rest. The group watched as Emily's ghostly figure slowly dissipated, finally at peace. Up a leg, years went by, and the group of friends moved on with their lives, never forgot about their experiences at Willow Manor, but they were able to find closure. One day, Sarah received a call from a real estate agent who were interested in buying Willow Manor, which had been abandoned for years. Sarah told them the story of what had happened there, and the agent decided to investigate. As they explored the ruins of the house, the agent discovered something strange. There was a secret room hidden in the basement, one that had never been discovered before. Inside the room, they found an old journal belonging to Emily. It contained a final entry in which Emily expressed regret for what she had done and said that she could never forgive herself. The agent realized that Emily's spirit had never truly been at peace, and that she had been trying to tell her story all along. The agent decided to publish Emily's journal as a way of honoring her memory. The book became a bestseller, and Emily's story became known around the world. People were fascinated by the haunted house and the tragic story of Emily and Richard. But for the group of friends, it was a reminder of the horror they had experienced, and the bond they had formed through it all.